Welcome to today's edition of Bury Your Bookie. I'm Jeff DeForest, joined as always on these Thursdays, Mondays and Thursdays. It's always a lot of fun. I look forward to talking to my man, Mike Jones, and hopefully you guys will get something out of this that you can take away. Michael, I remember this happening to me at a racetrack many years ago. I had a friend, he was a jockey agent, a gentleman named Cliff Collier, who came to prominence, I guess, as an agent when he was handling the book for Elvis the Pelvis Trujillo, who was maybe of modest impact in the game, but he did win a Breeders' Cup race. Was very effective, was always the leading jockey, first Delaware, then Monmouth Park, and then became of national prominence. And Cliff comes up to me at Gulfstream one day and says, after handing me a series of losers, and says, Defo, I got a horse for you today that cannot lose. Let me give it to you. And so he gives me the horse. Sure enough, the horse wins. Only paid 7-5, but only one horse can win the race, and he was right about it. And the horse's name was Game On Dude, who broke his maiden that day in his second start and went on to become a pretty prominent racehorse himself. Became an effective stakes winner, won a lot of money, had a very, very good career. But the name always stuck with me anytime something like this happened. And you would have to say, after watching Indiana and Oklahoma City last night, for the first time, those that laid the 700 to win 100 on Oklahoma City in the series, and maybe those that are thinking, hey, I can cash at 550 to 1 on the Indiana Pacers, are thinking, it's game on, dude, because at 2-1, you would have to think that this series has been thrown into much more of a state of chaos than anybody anticipated, regardless of the eventual outcome. How are you, my man? And I know you had a lot of observations about the game last night in the series.
Yeah, I just watching it last night, which I got to dig in, no hockey, and just kind of thought through it, and I was looking hard at it. I just thought the line 5.5, seeing fives, 5.5. I said, why are we laying this kind of number with a team that's 0-7 on the road during the playoffs, and 3-4 at that point, outright winners. So they're just not covered. They're not playing. They're not a good road team in these playoffs. If you're going to look at it by the price. But everybody loves them. I'm sure the odds makers lost a lot of money with them over the year, with them covering a lot of spreads. And they just can't pull back. And I know it's about equal money in a lot of these cases, but if you're looking at this, the value is really with Indiana. And what I saw last night was down the fourth quarter, which now after 3 games, Indiana has outscored Oklahoma City by 27 points in the fourth quarter. The pressure takes a little bit out of you emotionally. You watch Alexander take a hit and go down to the ground, gasping for air, taking his time. Is he hurt or is he trying to catch his breath? A lot of pressure seems to be on OKC, and I think Indiana's handling it a little bit better. Down 5 going into the fourth. Go ahead and win by 9. The home team, all that stuff that you want to say. To me, it looks like the offense is disorganized. They rely on Williams and Alexander to create. 3 guys standing around, putting in extreme effort on a defensive end. I just think that they're kind of getting lost here offensively in the crunch times of the games. And when you don't get challenged, when you win over 50 games by 10 or more points, and now you get the pressure, it looks like to me OKC's not handling it the way you thought they would going into the series. And if you're laying a 7-1, you better be hitting the 401k to get the money out because you might be paying pretty soon.
Well, that's
you're better with Louis to live.
Yeah, I mean, look, as we said, it's kind of like the Phantom Plunger at the racetrack, another racetrack reference. But where a guy puts 50,000 on a horse to show that appears to be a veritable cinch and lays over the field, goes off at 1-9, he's going to pick up 2,500 if he hits the bet. And you're thinking this guy's just got to be looking for an adrenaline rush. Why not just jump out of a plane from 20,000 feet? But he, now has to. If you lose that, you have to win the next 19 to get even. And the same thing is applicable here. Now, the other number that kind of jumped out at me, which I hadn't even thought about, was that Indiana has not lost consecutive games in the postseason. They're 6-0 after a loss in the postseason, and they showed last night that maybe, there's somewhat of a mirror image. I know a lot of people didn't see this. And I don't know that I did either, but you thought, okay, both of these teams have what? They have a prominent player. Probably you would give the edge to SGA. Obviously, the MVP averaged 30 points a game as the league's leading scorer. Been great, been very consistent, puts up other meaningful statistics as well in terms of assists, certainly, and maybe to a lesser extent rebounds. And he kind of lays over Halliburton, in my opinion, as a guy that if you were at the park This is always my acid test. Two guys show up. One is SGA, one is Halliburton. Maybe on looks you might take Halliburton, but on talent you're thinking SGA has the edge. But both teams have, as the Yogi Berra used to say, deep depth, and they come
Mm-hmm.
at you in waves. And last night the role players, Benedict Mathurin comes off the
Mm-hmm.
bench in about 25 minutes, has 27 points. And
Mm-hmm.
at home, well, we know that in the NBA, that's probably true, that cliche, where
Mm-hmm.
the role players show up much bigger at home. They did last night. And then the other thing Indiana seems to have that maybe we're overlooking as well is, and we dubbed this with FAU, and they made it to the Final Four a couple of years ago in college basketball, Florida Atlantic University, an improbable Cinderella story. But they had what we deemed to be late game resilience, where
Yes.
they could bounce back in the end game. And
Mm-hmm.
clearly in the NBA, the last 4 minutes is usually the only thing that really matters to
Right.
decipher who's going to win. And they seem to be really great in the clutch.
Yeah.
And they were again last night as they dominated. Your man McConnell, who has a game that reminds me of a young Mike Jones,
Yeah.
was a big factor.
Yeah.
Wow, I mean, in stunned disbelief, what was Adam Silver sitting next to some network executive because the guy said, "Hey, listen, Adam, you're going to sit here and explain to me how we got this crummy matchup that
Right.
nobody's watching. I put a lot of money into your pockets here, and I'm paying
That's
half
right.
the players. I need something better than this." And then the building was electrifying. The crowd couldn't have been
Mm-hmm.
any better. You would have thought Larry Bird, took off a suit, stepped out there in the court himself, and everything from the beginning of the fourth quarter on went Indiana's way. It was a good ball game, though. I know you've been
Yeah.
knocking the NBA postseason, and I would
Yeah.
tend to agree with you. It's paled in comparison from an excitement standpoint to the NHL playoffs, but they delivered last night.
Yeah.
That was an entertaining ball game to watch all the way through.
Yeah, it's a different style of game, Jeff, than when we grew up. You know, you 3-on-2, you don't go for two, you go for three, and the guy steps out of bounds a couple times. You see weird things happening, the ball being penetrated, turned around, thrown back to midcourt, guys setting ball screens. But here's where I'm looking at this from an OKC standpoint. I'm watching Holmgren hit the ground a ton of times now, trying to draw fouls. Is he strong enough to compete in the paint with these guys? When I saw them, I saw his length, his block shotting ability to be a factor going in. Doesn't look like protecting the rim is really that big of a deal. A little bit, but not as much as I thought it would be a factor. You know, if Turner wants to take the ball in the box against him, I think he'd get what he wants. These players now have a tendency to stay about the 3-point line. The Brook Lopez's, the Miles Turner, they just want to drift the center, drift and pull out instead of going in the box. But I think there's an advantage now, the physicality of what Indiana is now getting comfortable with in playing in the low post as well. McConnell drives the ball all over the place, tries to get in deep. You know, they're taking a little bit less threes than they've taken. So I'm looking at this like right now, this is do or die for Oklahoma City. I'm sure the line, I haven't seen the early line, probably will be 5.5, 6, or might stay the same. I don't know how you bet it OKC in game 4. I just don't know how you do it till you see it. Like I was more or less saying in game 1, give me the later than 9.5 until I see what I can get beat. Then I saw I got beat. Then I watched, and now I took Indiana at home because they're 0-7. And granted, you can sit there and look at every stat. It's going to change the law of numbers, but maybe until it does, you just stay on the Indiana train here. You know, I mean, I would even bet them. What's the number of the series? Got to be plus. You're still probably getting a plus number with them in the series.
No doubt. Yeah.
Well, why not?
Well, I mean, not much has changed in the eyes of the. It's kind of like you go to the casino, and my wife is a slot player, the Mustang, and you go there one day and you drop 300, and then you wake up the next day and you're thinking about going to the beach or maybe going having a nice lunch somewhere, and she says, "Let's go back to the casino. I have $20 in free play."
Right.
You're tempted. Oh, okay, yeah, wow, we got a $20 stake. You're still having to lay 6 with Oklahoma City in Game 4 when they just lost there.
Yeah.
And as you said, lost by 9. So to the spread, they lose by 14.5 points. And you're still getting 6 points with the Indiana Pacers at home, where, I mean, I don't know. Can Mathurin, he hasn't been that consistent. Can he have another game like that? I don't know. I mean, can you contain SGA under 30 points? He has 24, I think, in the game. And
Yeah.
so it wasn't, a big number by his standards, but you would have to think, my God, are they dangling a giant carrot in front of you? How could you possibly want to lay 6 with Oklahoma City in Game 4 when so far what we've seen outside of a dull fourth quarter that Indiana played when they lost by 16 in game two.
Yeah.
They've been a better team in the clutch both games, coming back from the grave in game one and
Mhm.
also coming back. I mean, they erased that 5-point deficit right away,
Yeah.
so it seemed like it was even up in the fourth quarter till they pulled
Right.
away. But how could you not take the 6 points in game number
You
four?
have to. You have to. And let me go back to game one too, and you go back and look at laying 7-1, the highest price in over 25 years or 35 years in a series final. Yeah, you thought Indiana got the easy path, the hurt Cleveland team. The Knicks really aren't that good. OKC gets the Memphis draw, and then they get a tough series with Denver, which should have been the eye opener for all of us to realize a down Denver team who got rid of their coach three games before the end of the season was probably in a slight disarray, but drove them to a game seven. And then you saw a Minnesota team that probably was a little bit eyes wide open, a little bit more, didn't make shots where they should have made them, and they get blown out a little bit. Now everybody's loved with OKC, and the regular season proves it. What you're seeing now is a resilient team and a bench that we all looked at the beginning. Oh, the bench factor is OKC's all the way. I don't know anymore. You're looking at the bench factor, it might go Indiana's way. So the way I look at this right now, I can get plus 185 up 2-1 in the series. I don't even know when I've ever heard of that price being available.
Yeah.
So if you steal game three, and now only one time in the history of the playoffs and the finals as a team come down from 3-1 and one. Wait, right? Wasn't that Cleveland doing that the other with
Yes.
LeBron against Golden State?
Right.
How can you not grab 185 now? I mean, how do you not? That's the way I look at it. It's
Only
just,
because you're still sick that you didn't take the plus 550. Although
yeah,
it's entirely possible that OKC rallies
yeah,
and wins the series, but
right.
I wouldn't
They
rule
might,
that.
they might, but you still got a 6-point swing to cover it.
Yeah.
And that's why I liked Indiana the other night. It was just basically coming out there saying, you're watching the game. They get up 8 in the first quarter. They look like, okay, here they are. They're going to be on cruise control. They're going to go. Then all of a sudden it flips. It's a 12-point swing in the second quarter. They score 4 points in the first 6 minutes, have 6 turnovers. You're like, how does this team play like this? Like, how do you sit there? And then you start really digging in that the ball gets in SGA's hands, and it's like a Carmelo Anthony factor. It just stays there till the 10-second clock till when he gets double teamed and he's got to force a pass. So is he trying to do too much? Does he not have the confidence in his teammates? And then when he's out of the game, Jalen Williams is playing the same way. So I looked at it like watching it, I think they're in a little disarray. I think Rick Carlisle is a little bit of an X factor against the OKC coach.
Agno, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like these are the things you really kind of don't look at because you're watching and you got your 80 games to look at or 100 games to look at, and now you're sitting there thinking about it. Wow, it's really in front of us that this team close out game one the way they did. Get a stinker in game two. You figured it would happen, but last night was really an indicator of what OKC's struggles are, and I don't know that they repair it. I mean, you're 0-8. I'll take 6.
Yeah, it was interesting. As I said, game on due now because
Yeah.
growing concerns by those chalk players. They're feeling like they're gargling with milk and magnesia now. And yet, still, you can't rule out OKC coming back, winning game four, and
No.
going up 3-2 when they get back home. That's entirely possible. But
Sure.
what you had to love is that this team that was forsaken, and many people were labeling this as just a waste of time. Why even bother playing the games? It's going to be OKC in 4 or 5. Now have to take a hard look at their rationale, and I'd love to see it. I mean, I'd love to see Indiana win Game 4 and take a 3-1 edge. Now we have the pucks going tonight.
Right.
Of course, we're here in South Florida, so the hometown team, the Florida Panthers, really demonstrating extreme dominance in game number 3.
Mm-hmm.
It's also hard to imagine that Edmonton is somehow going to pop out of this and win game 4. So what are your thoughts about tonight's action in the NHL?
Okay, so I looked at the line. The Panthers were 130, 135 in game 3, and now they're only 150 in game 4 after clear dominance and up 2-1. Tells you the price makers thinking there's a possibility of Edmonton here just by the number. I thought it would be in the 70 range. You're getting you're not getting a fair price, I think, with Edmonton to bet them. Here's where I think you got to look at it. That was, a little at the end of that game was a little seen at a slap shot a little bit, where all of a sudden we get the shot taken at Bennett. Clearly they're trying to disrupt him. And the Panthers came to their age and 5 guys started squaring off with 5 guys. And it was kind of like the old time hockey kind of routine. But what I saw is maybe this is Edmonton getting unnerved. That they're realizing now, because that was out of Edmonton's personality to go and start taking everybody, pair everybody up and go. And McDavid and Draisaitl get shut out. This is going to be off their superstars and their great ability. Tonight's the night to show, because I know you came back from 3-0 to take a game 7. And I know if that happened, you have the game 7 on your ice. I don't think we're getting there with a Panther win tonight. I just think that this team is better. Marchand has been a huge factor. Seth Jones has been a big factor. What Bill Zito, like you have made reference to, has done at the trade deadline.
Amazing.
I think this is actually a better team than what they've had last year. And Bob is right now showing what you were worried about if you were in Edmonton better. Where's the edge in goaltending? And it's clearly in the Panthers' net. So I don't see a path forward at Edmonton just by the dominance of it. But again, why they play the games. Edmonton steals game 4, and all of a sudden we're back in it again. But
yeah,
it's going to be a tough task for Edmonton tonight.
Yeah, you always love it. I mean, I contend that every game in the postseason is pivotal in a best-of-7 series, best-of-5, whatever you're playing. Look, you want to have the advantage, but if you go up 3-1, like you mentioned, not as big of a factor in hockey as it is in the NBA. But this should be just one hell of a bloodbath tonight. We'll see who comes out on top. But I mean, when you were getting plus 110 on the Panthers in the series before it started, well, very tempting to go in that direction, because they appear, as Yogi Berra would say, to have deep depth, and much more so than look, when they limited Draisaitl and McDavid, and they come up with nothing on the scoreboard, regardless of what other contributions they made during the course of the evening. It wasn't enough, and they end up getting clobbered 6-1, and then it turned into a pro wrestling scrum.
Right, and Jeff, they had 11 power plays. I don't think I've ever seen a game like that. It's like, how does that even occur? A period of power plays? So to me, that was where I thought the discipline goes, and it's a similar reaction to me with OKC. I liked Edmonton and OKC to start the series, so we're not burying your bookie here with my picks right now.
But
I can tell. Well, we had OKC, right? But the point I'm saying is, this is just a real weird scenario. Looking at this, going, what happened to the Oilers? But they lost their composure, and I think they'll pull it back. I think this will be a much more competitive game. Maybe get back to that overtime final. But I also see that I would bet Florida lay 150, trying to see let me see that Edmonton can prove to me that they can bounce back. Now, real quick, going at this game that we saw the other night.
Yeah.
This kind of happened in Edmonton in game 4 last year. But the Panthers had 2 home games and were up 3-0. This dominant game that I saw there, and I thought the Panthers had control in game 1, up 3-1 and blew the lead, and I felt comfortable with them watching them in game 2 that they could pull that game out. I haven't seen them. They could be up 3-0 in this series. I haven't seen the Edmonton team that I thought come into the series that showed what they did in dominating the West. So that's why I kind of lean toward Florida, that this really could be end. But I think Florida expands on this because of what happened last year. I think looking at them, looking how much better they're playing, the fact that they lost that game 8-1 in game 4, and then they said, we got 2 games back, we'll be okay, and the momentum switched, I don't think they want. I think they want to put the hammer down. That's where I see a Florida game win tonight. A little bit closer. I don't think it's going to get out of control, and I think Edmonton will pull it back together. But, again, the edge and the goaltending. I don't know if it's going to be Picard or Skinner. I would think it would be Picard after what I've been watching. But, it's going to be another great game. I look forward to it.
Skinner, I mean, since that Marchand goal, which he doesn't even touch the puck, it just slides through his legs like he was trying to pick up a watermelon seed. And then gives up, he got yanked after 5, but that was a very poor showing, 5 goals on 23 shots. So that was some serious ugliness. I could hear as you were speaking, the late, great Harold Letterman, who they'd go to him after 3 rounds of a fight. Lampley would throw it to Harold Letterman, and he would go, "Jim, 2 rounds to 1. The Mexican is beating the shit out of this guy. 2 rounds to 1. Julio Cesar Chavez." If you were scoring this as a fight, you probably give all 3 rounds so far to the Panthers, even though they lost game 1. All right, I know this about you, and it's one of the things I love about you. You, like me, are a huge fan of following golf wagering.
Yes.
And we have the U.S. Open on, and it's underway.
Yeah.
I always like when you have early morning sports activity. Usually it's because it's in Europe somewhere, like the French Open or Wimbledon coming up, or the Open, as they now call it in golf, the British
Mhm.
Open. You had the U.S. Open underway early on. This was kind of interesting. The players are fetching and bitching. I don't know. Did they actually mow the rough? Did you
Yeah.
see that picture where they all had the lawnmowers?
Yeah. I mean, it was 5. It's 5 inches out there. I talked to a gentleman prior to getting on here today that plays. I played Oakmont a lot, and he said it's higher than what it is, but he didn't think it was as bad as it could be.
Yeah,
So he thought. I think the scores are there. I mean, there's 3 unders right now, and they predicted. ESPN put out JJ Spawn. I'm looking at his 4 under in
four
the
under. Yeah,
yeah, so some of they're getting around there. Again, this is one of these golf courses. You keep in the fairway, you're going to get a clean line in the fairway, big greens. So just don't miss the green at all, And then if your putters keep it reasonably close, par's a good score. But when I saw 278.5 to be the over under, 1 under is going to win this thing. That's going to be fun golf for us hackers around to see if these guys will put up numbers like I like to see.
yeah.
So, and the big story was a 5 handicap's not going to break 95 over there. So that's in my range, and I can play a little bit. And if I'm a 5 handicap, and that guy's telling me I'm not going to shoot 95 at Oakmont, it's not going to be a fun day. So yeah, if the wind picks up, maybe Saturday or Sunday, it should be very interesting to see what happens.
All right. So, who are your picks if you were going
Well,
to?
I'm going to
Have a
go with
right now, some of
all
them.
right. I'm a little bit of a buck here on the live. I just love Joaquin Neiman. I took a little bit of flyer on him at 30 to
Okay.
1, just because he played well. He won last week in Virginia, kind of similar conditions from what we saw, similar weather conditions. Just I like the player. I think he's going to win a major probably in the next upcoming years. So that's kind of for the live side. I don't know about Scotty Scheffler. I think you want to keep the ball straight. I was against Rory McIlroy in my matchups, and Rory's got off to a really good start. Hit the longest drive on tour on par 5, hit a 392-yard drive on a 618-yard par 5. Probably had a 6 iron on it. When you're hitting 618 yards, par 5's driver's 6 iron. If you're betting against a guy, you thank God there's only 2 par 5s on the golf course. But yeah, I mean, these guys are whacking it and hitting it hard. And so, Xander Schauffele was a guy I like. I want to play in a big major. I like him in these spots. He's even through 6, 7 holes. So, yeah, I'll wait. I'll come back and text you something over the weekend you can throw out there that probably after today I'll come up with it. I know that in most of these majors you have to be in the top 15 after the day one, and I would think how tough this golf course is. You can't have a 676 or 77. I don't think any of those guys that throw up a big number are going to be able to get back in it because there's just not a lot of birdies out there. So you just want to par's a great score. You want to get your way around. Guys with short games up and down. You're watching them experiment in this big rough around the greens. Guys who are accurate with their irons. Morikawa might be a guy that might contend here. A guy who's very accurate with his irons. Good iron player. 7,400 yards. All these guys have the bag to get there. So, it should be interesting.
It's not fair to the average hacker. I mean, you're a 5 handicap. I'm a 5 handicap on each hole, or was. But I mean, when you hit a good shot, and I was watching this guy. He eagled the first hole, the par 4. He shoots a 2.
Right.
Maldovan is his name.
Right.
Maxwell Maldovan. He's got one win as a pro, and that was in Guam somewhere in a tournament that had a total purse of 225,000. Even though it was a sanctioned PGA event, it was like some minor
Mhm.
distinction. No, he's relatively new. And then, so I'm watching him on the second hole before I got started with some other stuff I was doing, and he lands his tee shot in a trap, hits the ball, it hits the green, sort of dead center. And this should not happen. This should not be permissible for people that set up golf courses. I don't care if you're the USGA or the PGA people. Where guys spanks one right into the middle of the green. It has the slightest bit of rotation on it, so the ball actually stops for a second and then starts to roll back, and it rolls up back, and it ends up 50 yards off the green on the front. You're like,
It's a slight
what kind of
spin.
crap is that?
It's a slight spin in the speed of the greens, and if you hit it on that hill, it goes off. It's really the test of golf that most watchers don't get. You're going to get into a club somewhere, play some elite golf course, and you're going to see something in the green that you're not going to
Get
even
out of
understand. It looks like it's unfair. And then you're going to see the member get there and hit a 9-footer with a break, left to right break, and say, "Oh, you got to read it." So there's guys who play these golf courses and they exist, and then there's this. But these guys are the best players in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unfair. It started at Shinnecock, I think a dozen years ago when Phil Mickelson had a putt that he tapped and it went 30 yards off the green into a bunker. And he said this is unfair, and they complained. These guys are good enough to sport and figure it out. Yeah.
He hits one from one side of the green to the other. And
Yeah.
I think that was, didn't he win a U.S. Open?
Yeah, no, Mickelson never won years old, but at I remember that whole discussion at Shinnecock when it seemed like it was unfair, and guys who had played that had said to me, "Yeah, they just sped up the greens. They made them fast, and then the wind makes them faster. If it's windy, the green dries out and it speeds it up. That's the thing. When you play in the morning, there's a little bit of moisture. The greens they can be fast, but they're not going to be as fast. The afternoon guys, if it does get a little windy, those greens are going to be lightning. And my buddy thinks they're at a 13, 14 step meter. That's as high as you're going to see all year. So get ready. But they're out there for a week putting them. They know. They know. They're just complaining because they're embarrassed that they're putting up big numbers. But this is going to be fun because if 4 under wins, I think right now that 4 under number is going to be a pretty good number at the end.
Maybe.
So,
seems like cruel and unusual punishment, though, when you hit a perfect shot or seemingly so, and then it ends up either in the water or like it's 17 at the TPC or where the ball. I mean, you should be allowed a free drop on the green if something like that happens. That would be. My first thing I do whenever I used to play golf was we had a book burning on the first tee and burn the USGA rules book, and that would be that. All right, any baseball activity for you?
Yeah, we're gonna jump in on a baseball here a little bit. Tyler Schoolball's been great after her loss. Kramer's been tough. The Orioles are playing better. I kind of lean a little bit Schoolball. I get it now. I think it's going to go up and get closer to 2-1 by game time just when people see what's going on. I saw 78, which is available. Even in the under in the game might be even another play. I just think they're not hitting him. And the bats for Detroit are a little bit low. But after that 10-1 drubbing last night, I think Schoolball comes out, gets the Tigers back on track with a win. Last night we got really lucky with the San Francisco Giants, who had won 6 games in a row, major league record by 1 run. And last night it looks like it's going to happen again as they go up 7-6 in the 8th inning, but put up a 3 spot in the 9th, win 10-7. So we got a little lucky there. But yeah, we're on that. The Mets playing well with Senga, kind of could lay a 1.5 maybe with them today. But yeah, we're on the Tigers.
All right, Tigers, the pick tonight for Mike Jones. All right, Michael, enjoy all of the golf action. It's always good when you can go bell to bell from the time you wake up until the time you go to sleep watching a tournament like this. And looks like the great equalizer is in effect here, much like the red clay is for a lot of players. It's quicksand for a lot of tennis players and tends to even things out where you can get some long shot schmenk who beats one of the top names, like Fritz being eliminated in the first round at the French this year. And you can jump on some bombs in the U.S. Open and maybe cash. Yep. There's round by round betting, in tournament betting. Sure. I think you're at the point now where you're betting like every iron shot. I think whether or not.
Well, they do that. I think ESPN bet with the Fortenbar goes out there and they bet each shot, each guy's hole that they can do. They put that out on ESPN bet that people can bet this, and that's just pot luck, it's just like you're looking at, you want to see it after a drive, but these guys are so good, their recovery shots. You're just risking, take the money, bet a birdie, and have fun with it. But just realize that, that's just stealing money for the bookmaker, watching those daily hole betting games that they put out there on the telecast.
They seldom compound the problem like the average duffer would do. Paul, is behind some trees. They hit the most remarkable recovery shots, I think. That's even more amazing than the guy that's blistering 330-yard drives right down the middle is some of the awkward positions and situations where players are able to make par and or stave off some disastrous snowman or giant number because of their ability to recover out of almost any position. All right, have a great one, Mike Jones. Big podcast. I actually think I tapped into it yesterday. I don't know if you saw me jump in there. I didn't mean to. I was just twiddling around on a computer.
Good. Maybe I can get you to be a Giant fan for long. Maybe if we start covering a couple of games in the fall, I'll get you on the bandwagon. You can start.
I was a major Jet fan, but the first game I ever attended pro football was with the New York Giants with my now late uncle. Uncle Joey took me to a game. And I still had in my room, when my parents still had their house on Long Island, they had left my room somewhat intact from when I moved out. And I still had the Goodbye Alley banner that I bought for $1. That was the
There
one
you go.
souvenir I wanted. Goodbye, Allie. It was Allie Sherman era,
Yep.
and everybody was involved in the chant there. Goodbye, Allie. And so,
Here's your giant Ali Sherman story. Not many people know this. In 1960, Giants make it, Jim Lee Howe out, Ali Sherman in. But who were the coordinators that they passed over? One Tom Landry and Vince Lombardi, and went with Ali Sherman. Maybe that's a
there
sign
you
of
go.
what
That could have
the
been my
Giants were as a franchise back then, even.
nicest guy in the world. But yeah, what was unfortunately met with very little favoritism by the fans there as they were losing their ass all during that season. All right, Mike, we love you, man. Thanks so much for being with us, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Great to be with you, Jeff.
Mike Jones, ladies and gentlemen, here with us on Bury Your Bookie. We hope you guys have some good luck today and good luck tonight. The Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers should be a beauty. Looking forward to that. And, of course, U.S. Open action is always a lot of fun. For Mike Jones, I'm Jeff DeForest. See you next time, the next edition of Bury Your Bookie.